Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Hugh McKay, and today is my last forum as president of the City Club of Cleveland. It has been a great honor to serve as president of the City Club, this citadel of free speech. I've been truly honored. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce the incoming City Club president, Hewitt Shaw. Hewitt is managing partner of Baker and Hostetler. That firm's founder, Newton D. Baker, was the leading force behind the formation of this City Club back in 1912. So the circle is unbroken here 100 years later, and it is very fitting that Hewitt Shaw of Baker and Hostetler will be president of the City Club here in our 100th anniversary year. Hewitt, you are going to have a great year. We're honored to have you, and congratulations.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Hugh. I'm delighted to continue that tradition, and I'm even more delighted today to thank you for your wonderful leadership over this past year, including your devotion and commitment to this club as indicated by your attendance here Friday after Friday introducing the wonderful speakers. So as a small token of our appreciation on behalf of all of the members and the board, I'd like to present to you this gavel commemorating your year of leadership at the City Club.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Hewitt, and all of you. Today we are pleased to have a speaker who is well known to nearly all Ohioans. We're honored to have Jim Tressel here, and Jim has a new and very exciting and important role at the University of Akron that you're going to be hearing about. Our former City Club president, Ralph Delarada, managing director and managing partner of Western Reserve Partners, was instrumental in arranging Mr. Tressel's appearance here today. And we've asked Ralph to come up and do the formal introduction of our speaker. Ralph, come on up.
Thank you, Hugh. Well, good to be here with all of you today. I also want to thank Dr. Proenza, who's a member of the board of the City Club, for helping us get Coach Tressel here today, and also my good friend Mark Summers, his good friend and teammate from Baldwin Wallace, and best man at his wedding, and co-conspirator and a lot of other things. So good to have you here today, Mark. Well, I expect many of you have come here not to listen to me, but rather to hear from the man sitting behind me. It's only polite that I lead with a brief overview of what is nothing less than an impressive set of his lifetime accomplishments. James Patrick, as we know him, Jim Tressel, is an American football coach and just as importantly, an educator. He currently serves as the Vice President of Strategic Engagement for the University of Akron. He's born not far from here in Mentor, Ohio. Jim went to Berea High School, where he graduated and later attended Baldwin Wallace, and where both of his parents, Lee and Eloise, worked. Actually, if I'm right, I think, Jim, you played under your father, did you not? Right, and Mark as well. Jim was privileged enough to play quarterback and achieving all conference honors as a senior. After graduation, Jim would become a graduate assistant football coach at the University of Akron, so he's kind of come full circle, where he simultaneously received a master's degree in education. Before earning the position of head coach at Youngstown State, Jim would gain experience at Miami, Syracuse, and Ohio State, three pretty good football programs. At Youngstown State, Jim would accomplish more than just most of us would hope to in a lifetime. Working as both coach and athletic director, he turned a team with a 2-9 record in his first year into a perennial powerhouse, achieving double-digit playoff berths, 4 Division I AA national championships, 4 Coach of the Year awards, and the distinction of becoming part of the first father-son duo to win national championships in college football. Jim's success would not go unnoticed, and in 2001, Ohio State came calling. It did not take long for Jim to defeat Ohio State's greatest rival, as he did so in his first season. Behind the vest, Ohio State posted the first 14-0 season in history and defeated heavily favored Miami in double overtime to win the 2002 national championship. And I still remember that game like it was yesterday. What a great game. Giving Jim 5 for his career. The win resulted in Jim becoming the first coach in NCAA history to win the AFCA's Coach of the Year award while at different schools and at different divisions. Jim would achieve an overall record of 94-22 at Ohio State, including 6 Big Ten Conference championships, a 4.3 mark in BCS bowl games, and most importantly to many of us, an 8-1 record against the arch-rival Wolverines. It's for you, Billy. In addition to his long list of professional achievements, Jim has also been an active member of the community and a loving father. Jim and his wife Ellen are involved with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Athletes in Action, the OSU Thompson Libraries, and the James Cancer Center at the Ohio State University Medical Center, among other passionate causes they share. The couple established the Tressel Family Fund, which partners with the James Cancer Center to provide cancer prevention research. When not achieving new professional heights or enriching his communities, Jim and Ellen spend time with their 4 children, Zach, Carly, Eric, and Whitney. Please help me in welcoming a man whose great level of success is certainly no accident, but rather the result of a lifetime effort to constantly improving the state of his surroundings and those around him. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jim Tressel.
Keep dropping this microphone here. Excuse me. It's so wonderful to be here in Cleveland, and it's kind of intimidating when you look at that list of people that have spoken here. I'm glad they haven't done a query of ACT scores of the speakers, because I might not make the top list there. But it's exciting to be here in Cleveland for so many reasons. It starts with the people. You know, this is home, and for some of you might be old enough to remember the Cleveland Press. I was a Cleveland Press paper boy for 2 years, and I don't know if it was my fault or whatever, but they got rid of the press. And then for 6 years after that, I was a Cleveland Plain Dealer paper boy, and everything about Cleveland was really all we cared about. You know, the Indians and the Browns, and the one thing Ralph didn't mention, probably one of the highlights of my career, is that I was the first ball boy in the history of the Cleveland Cavaliers in 1960, whenever they started, and so, you know, everything about Cleveland. When we were in elementary school, if we got straight A's the last 6 weeks, we got to go to an Indians game in the summer. And, you know, there was guys that never got above a C, that the last 6 weeks they were going to do whatever they had to do to get straight A's, because you wanted to go see the Indians play, and the zoo, and, you know, all the rest. And so it's so special to be back here, and to think that this club has been together for 100 years, meeting weekly. It's humbling to have a chance to share and be here, and to represent Dr. Proenza. And many of you know Dr. Proenza. He's an extraordinary human being and a tremendously visionary leader. He happens to be in France right now, and on the front end of his trip he was lecturing, and he and Teresa got a chance to, I think, slip away for 5 days of fun at the end of his work over there, and he's just an amazing guy who has done an amazing job at a wonderful university. As Ralph mentioned, in 1975 I had a chance to begin at the University of Akron as a graduate student and graduate assistant coach, and finished my degree there, and had the good fortune to be hired full-time to teach and coach, and quite honestly, it looks very, very different now than it did in 1975, 6, 7, and 8. What's been done there has been amazing, and much of it is because of Dr. Proenza's vision and tremendous leadership. In fact, 3 of our Board of Trustees are here today. I wasn't nervous today until I got here and the bosses were here, and I thought, well, I was going to be in good shape. Dr. Proenza's in France, you know, how much trouble can I get in? And now Dick Pogue and John Pavlov and Ralph Palmisano are here, and if there was 5 of them here and I messed up, I'd really be in trouble. But we've had tremendous leadership, and we have a vision that Dr. Proenza calls our Vision 2020, that we've got some things in mind that we would really like to accomplish and contribute to the footprint of Northeast Ohio. And that's what made it exciting about being back here, to have a chance to in the educational sense, partner with folks like Baldwin Wallace, where I grew up from kindergarten through college. 16 years I went to schools within 1 block of my home, elementary, junior high, high school, and right there at Baldwin Wallace. And to be back in Northeast Ohio to partner with them and our friends at Cleveland State that I think are doing an extraordinary job. And Barbara Snyder is a dear friend over at Case. She was our provost at Ohio State and was a special person. And you know, just to see what so many people are doing here to make sure that we do the things that higher education can do for our region. Dr. Proenza has in one of his things that he hands out an unbelievable picture, and I don't know if he's ever shared it with this group. Forgive me if this is redundant, but he has a picture of the globe that shows a light where, if at night, you can see where the people live on our earth. And then there's a kind of a pull-out map of the United States, and there's light where the people live. And then it's a pull-out of the state of Ohio, and it has the lights where the concentration of where the people live. And he is so proud of that and so focused on the fact that Northeast Ohio clearly has the largest and brightest light in the state of Ohio. That our region has, I think, in the neighborhood of 5 million plus folks out of 11 or 12 million that we have in our state, and that he talks every chance he can about the impact that we need to have from a higher education standpoint in Northeast Ohio. Impact that will be an economic impact, it'll be a cultural impact, it'll be a relationship impact, and that we can make a tremendous difference. So to have a chance to come with Dr. Proenza and his leadership and our faculty and staff and our 30,000 students, I joked with a reporter the other day that I used to have 100 students and I was very busy. Now I have 30,000 students and I feel like I'm busier. And the vision that Dr. Proenza has put before us is extraordinary. We would like to be a 40,000 student university. We would like to have programs that would help prepare our young people for the things that our region and our state and our country need. And I heard John Kasich say in the State of the State that we've got to get better in higher education, and also we've got to get better from a business standpoint and industry standpoint of telling higher education what we need so that we can do a better job of preparing the folks for what our needs are. And so we're excited about that challenge. To become a university of 40,000 folks, we're going to have to improve our retention rate because, as you know, some folks come with varying degrees of preparation, and we've got to do a better job of helping folks that maybe didn't get started as quickly, do a better job of finishing the race. We've got to do a good job of making sure that we can reach out and recruit and attract folks to great programs. And with that, he also has the vision of our endowment being up over $1 billion and our yearly research being up over $200 million. And those things are measurable in his Vision 2020, but I think the things that are not measurable, which in some ways it would be hard to say how we exactly impact economically on the region, but we want to be one of those partners along with Cleveland State and Baldwin Wallace and John Carroll and Kent State and Case and all the rest that turn out that workforce that has that innovation and has that creativity and has that entrepreneurial spirit and so forth, so that our region does a tremendous job competing in this world economy. I was with a fellow yesterday, Jim Clay, over at Westfield, and he was in a group, I think it's called Team NEO. Is there a group? Yeah. Team Neo. And he was talking about, one day they had a program, and they talked about 10 of the greatest inventors in the history of our country, going back from the beginning of our country to now, that of those 10, his recollection was that 4 of them were from right here in Northeast Ohio. And that's the kind of history that we have here. That's the kind of tradition that we have here. And we talk all the time about the fact that with great tradition goes responsibility to even have greater excellence. That was something that we felt strongly when we went to Baldwin-Wallace. That was something that we talked about at Youngstown State through the course of our years there, and that was something that was talked about every day when we were at Ohio State, is that we have tremendous tradition in places like that, and with that tradition goes a responsibility to make a heck of a difference and to get even better. I got a phone call from a Clevelandite about 6 weeks ago, and it was Mike Milkovich, Jr. Now, some of you folks here might remember Mike Milkovich, Sr. He was the legendary wrestling coach at Maple Heights back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, right in there, and you know, won more state championships than you can imagine, and sent kids all over the country to become. In fact, there's supposed to be a national champ or a Big Ten champ here somewhere. Ralph, you told me. Who is that?
He's a Michigan guy.
Yep. Well, you remember Mike Milkovich? Okay. Well, Mike Milkovich, Jr. has a passion for history, and he called one day and he said, you know, I've got a belief. He said, I've heard Dr. Proenza talk about the impact that we want to make in Northeast Ohio, and that the impact that higher education needs to have in Northeast Ohio. He says, I happen to believe that economic impact is most affected by the understanding of local history. This was his hypothesis. I said, you know, why is that? And he went on to say that the young people that are growing up locally, for them to have the confidence and the spark and the belief that someone that's lived right in the same soil they've lived has done extraordinary things, if they see that and learn that and it's proved to them, that they'll have a better chance of believing that in themselves. And I said, you know, that makes a lot of sense. I think back to every place I've ever coached, and we would always go back and we would teach from the history of our program. In fact, in 2002, I'll never forget, our kids were walking around saying that we were going to be the national champions. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, we were 7-5 the year before, my first year, and I was lucky to make it to my second year. And they're talking about being national champions, and the year before that we were 8-4, and the year before that we were 6-6. There wasn't a whole bunch of national championship type stuff going on, and they were talking about being national champions. So I thought to myself, well, they certainly appear to want to do that, just like I'm sure we appear to want to have great economic impact and entrepreneurial spirit and innovation and so forth here, but do we really know how to do it? And so I thought, let's go back and study the team that won the first national championship at Ohio State. And it happened to be the 1942 team, and they were an extraordinary group. Paul Brown was their coach. He had just come from a high school coaching position at Massillon 2 years earlier, and he was the head coach there, and we had an outstanding team, and we won the national championship. And there was a book written about that group, and so I thought, well, here's the way that maybe we can help our young people do what they say they want to do, and that's by have them learn about someone who has done it on the same soil. And so we had them read a book called Expanding Your Horizons. Extraordinary book. One of the members of the team wrote it. It had little 3-4-page autobiographies on each player on the team, what they did when they played there, how they got there, what they did when they played there, what they did after they were done playing there and in the rest of their lives and so forth. And it was an extraordinary team. There were like 43, 44 players on the team. Once they won the national championship in 1942, 35 of them went to war. and 3 of them were lost in the war. One of them, Chuck Surrey, was one of the true heroes of the Battle of the Bulge, when the Allied forces were surrounded. Obviously, the plan wasn't the right plan. It didn't look like the thing was going to go the way it should. A volunteer, they said, we need a volunteer to get through the enemy lines. We've got to get communication back to Patton because we need a new plan. This one's not going to work. So Chuck Surrey raised his hand and volunteered to somehow get out of the surrounded scenario that they were in, and he ran through the enemy lines. He had his helmet shot off, his belt pack shot off, and got through alive and regained communication with Patton's folks, and we changed our plan and so forth, and the rest is history. And just some extraordinary folks, doctors, lawyers, teachers, coaches, folks that were entrepreneurs, an extraordinary group of people in on that particular team. And so as our guys studied that, I think it kind of came through to them that they understood that we thought this book was going to be all about football. It had really nothing to do with football. It had to do with the quality and the creativity and the imagination and the work ethic and the discipline and the toughness and all those things of that group. And that's how they became national champions. And so the rest of that story is history too. Chuck Surrey, the World War II veteran, honor winner and so forth, spoke to our team. Bill Willis. People talk about Jackie Robinson all the time, which was an extraordinary feat. Bill Willis was a starter on the Cleveland Browns the year before Jackie Robinson was a starter for the Brooklyn Dodgers. I mean, Bill Willis was an extraordinary human being. He came in and talked to our team, and we kept talking about the history of what had been accomplished on that soil. And so when Mike Milkovich brought that forward, that made sense to me. And so we called up George Knepper. George Knepper is a history professor emeritus from the University of Akron, written 2 or 3 books about the University of Akron and about the Akron area and so forth. And I brought George, actually Luis brought George in. Luis summons me to go talk with him, and I thought, what am I going to talk to him about? And so I talked to him about Mike Milkovich Jr. and what his thoughts were, and that I happened to have a DVD that he had done for the city of Medina to try to convince the city of Medina that teach your local history. Your kids will be more confident, they'll be more engaged, they'll have more belief, they'll have more faith, and so forth. So I gave George Knepper those DVDs that Mike had created as kind of his test cases and so forth, and I think he did Hudson as well. And George took them home and studied them, and now we have George and Mike connected, and they're making a plan to take that forward. But I think it's true. If our young people here in Northeast Ohio really understand what extraordinary things have been accomplished right here on this soil, they may have even more belief that they can get that done. And then if we in higher education can create those programs, give them those opportunities, prepare them to take them beyond what they even think they can be, what an amazing impact can be made here in our region, in our state, and in the country, and as we're competing against the world. As you think about that time from Memorial Day to 4th of July, I don't know how you folks are, but that's a pretty humbling time in my mind. And one of the things we try to teach young people, whether it was when we were coaching or now working with them on a daily basis at the University of Akron, is that if we're ever going to be extraordinary in any way, it probably needs to begin with humility and gratitude. And if you think about from Memorial Day through the 4th of July, and you think about how fortunate we are, you know, every time we pick up the newspaper and we lose a soldier in Afghanistan, or back when we were in Iraq and we'd lose a soldier here or there, it tears your heart out. But then, you know, if you really go look at the numbers of men and women we lost developing this freedom we have, that are honored during these national holiday times at this time of year. It's mind-boggling, the numbers, hundreds of thousands. And we think it's important that our young people have that attitude of gratitude, as we call it, because no matter how much they believe, no matter how much they buy into that great history that we have right here in our soil, if they're not humble and grateful and understand just how fortunate we are to have these opportunities to go out and see if we can compete with the rest of the world, to see if we can be better than the folks we line up against. If we don't have that gratitude for what's come before us, then I'm not sure we have a chance, no matter how much intellect we have, no matter how much belief we have, no matter how much history we read. So the first thing that we always try to accomplish with our young people is carry an attitude of gratitude. I know every time you pick up the paper, it's going to be jobs are tough and we're creating too many loans when you go to college and it's taking too long and all the things that seem to be talked about quite often, much more than success stories are talked about anyway. We've got to make sure that our young people understand that our list of blessings living in this country, the opportunities we have in this area, are a lot longer than that list of hardships and that list of things that some like to say is awfully long. I think if each one of us looked in the mirror and added up the blessings we have versus the hardships we've had, no comparison, not even close. And so we've got to make sure that our young people understand that. Now, they told me I could only talk for 25 minutes, which, when you have an ego like mine, I can't say hi in 25 minutes. But I want to leave you with one thing that I've learned in my new position. It's probably not a new position, because we felt, and I feel, that coaches really are in some ways, the purest form of teachers. And I don't say that to have any less reverence for teachers, but if someone had a problem when I was coaching at Youngstown State and it made the paper, they never mentioned their major. They didn't say, John Smith, chemistry major, was caught at the bar last night. And probably they didn't call the chemistry teacher when it happened. And so we were 24/7. There's a chemistry teacher back there. We were 24/7, we felt, as teachers and coaches. And what we're doing at the University of Akron really is no different. We're trying to help young people understand what opportunities they have, what it's going to take, and I think that's a critical part of the formula. Things seem a little easier because we see highlights. I like to say that this generation is the Sports Center generation. All they see is the big game-winning shots and the great plays. They don't see any of the work that goes into it. They don't see any of the failed things, and so forth. All they see is the highlights. We've got to make sure young people understand what it takes and how competitive and how fierce our competitors are working. I think that's critical. But things really aren't any different whether you're a football coach or you're an educator at any level. But there were three things that we thought were critical when we were a part of football, and I can see they're just as or even more critical as I'm a part of a leadership team at a great university. And they were 3 C's, and I wrote them down. And they're probably critical no matter what you do in your business. Number 1, communication. Communication is so critical. It's amazing what we can accomplish and how we can change attitudes if we'll just share why we're doing what we're doing, and we don't live in little silos separated and fire emails at one another and so forth. If we'll just communicate. So crucial. The second one is if we'll collaborate. And that's why it's exciting to be back in Northeast Ohio and the great, in our world, the great universities, with Tri-C as part of that. And we've got a chance to collaborate to prepare young people to do extraordinary things. And we've got a chance to do that in business, and we've got a chance to do that in everything we work on. And without it, I'm not sure we can reach our potential. If we don't collaborate, if we all just say, hey, leave me alone in my world, I'm going to do my thing, and then that's it, I'm not sure we can get anywhere near our potential. And then the last one would be, you need to have a common cause. You need to have a common cause. And I thought about this opportunity to talk to this group, and I know the City Club is considered the city's club, everyone in the city. And all the way back to 1912, it didn't matter. It wasn't like you had to be picked to be in this club. Everybody, no matter what your thoughts were, your ideologies, whatever it was, you could be in the city's club. And the question that all of us have, that question that we would love to get the answer to, I'm going to leave this question and then leave it open to questions as we go. But here's the question that I'm trying to figure out. Why can't we all get along? You know, it's amazing. God gave us the ability to reason and think and plan and do a lot of things that, like, animals can't do. And we have all these, we've been given all these faculties, all these abilities. How come we can't get along? Now, right now, I'm sure you folks are like I am. You can't wait until this election's over. Some of these commercials, you like, holy smokes. Why can't we all get along? Because if we're going to be successful, we have to communicate, have to collaborate, but we've got to have a common cause. And that's the beauty of the City Club. The City Club wanted to bring all people together to have friendly conversation. Didn't mean everyone that walked out the doors agreed with everyone and everything that was said, but there was, the common cause was that there was a respect. There was the freedom to share. And the chances are, every time you listen to someone who you may not share their beliefs, you still probably learn something, because you go back to that communication. And so, before I answer any questions, I would leave you with that question for the City Club. How come we can't get along? Or maybe it's not the right way to put it. If the City Club goes another 100 years, maybe we'll figure out how we can get along. Thanks so much.
Well put. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we're listening to a forum featuring Jim Tressel, Vice President for Strategic Engagement at the University of Akron. We will return to Mr. Tressel in a moment for the traditional City Club question and answer period. Please go ahead and formulate your questions now. Remember to keep them brief. We welcome all of you here and those listening to 90.3 WCPN Idea Stream, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across the country. Our television broadcast partner is WVIZ PBS Idea Stream. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. We'd like to welcome guests today at tables hosted by Baker Hostetler, Baldwin Wallace, Centric Consulting, and Western Reserve Partners. We thank you for your support. Now we'd like to return to Mr. Tressel for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from all of you. Holding the microphones today, we have City Club 100th Anniversary Assistant Director Betsy Wallace and Program Director Carrie Miller. First question, please.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for everything you did, both academically and athletically at Ohio State. And my question is, how did you put up with the antics of people like Terrell Pryor and that gang?
Well, I'm sure I would give you the same answer that any parent in the room would do. when they're your kids, and you don't like their behavior at times. You try to modify their behavior at times, and some kids get it sooner than others. Some you wonder if they're ever going to get it. But that's a responsibility, being a parent, and we felt that that was our responsibility.
Mr. Tressel, you spoke about the 30,000 students who now go to the University of Akron and the programs you have and your goals you have. Traditionally, colleges try to educate their young people with humanities and the philosophy and other things that make up for a full life. Now, that's sort of in contrast to getting a good job. But how do you keep that in balance? And do you think there's still an opportunity for students today to be educated as they were in the days of classical Greece and the classics and all those good things?
You know, that is one of the challenges, and I think this. Right now we have an initiative that we're working on, keeping in mind that mom and dad, when they send their youngster to your institution, right now I would say if we took a poll, most of them would like to be assured that Johnny's going to get a job. That, you know, it's so crucial, especially with the cost of education and so forth. So that's got to be a focus. But on the other hand, we also know that we need them prepared in all parts of their life. And so we have an initiative right now that we're working on. We call it the Akron Experience. And we're trying to create an opportunity for our young people to grow in a lot of different areas. They're going to be important outside of their academic discipline, outside of the job they may end up doing. We've got to do a better job of our young people leaving the university being more financially literate, because some of the loan problems and the things that we're reading about are because someone took a T-shirt at the student union to fill out a credit card and then maxed his credit card out, and then there was a basketball that they gave away for signing up for another credit card and got that, and then he decided he wanted to live in a little bit better apartment on his junior year than he could afford, and not to mention the cost of tuition and books and so forth. So, for instance, we think that our people need some work outside of their discipline in simple financial literacy. Health and wellness. We're reading all the time about the fact that scary numbers about the obesity problems in our nation, about the heart problems and so forth. And so health and wellness has got to be something that we want them to be a part of their whole curriculum and their spiritual and moral and ethical growth and so forth and so on. So we have an initiative to create this Akron Experience. In answer to your question about the reading of the classics and the humanities and the history and so forth, we have a program called Our Common Reading. And there's a book for the whole freshman class that they read throughout the course of their first semester. And it's in discussion in their first-year experience class and so forth. And then the author comes in and spends time with our students and so forth, trying to help them understand that probably the things that will impact you more than anything will be what you read and who you hang around. If you really think about what can impact you the most, probably won't be what specific job you do. I mean, that will impact you significantly, but nothing like what you read, what you allow to go in your mind, and who you hang around. And so, yes, we are trying to have as broad and comprehensive curriculum and program we have, knowing we've got to compete and get these young people ready to be able to go out and have a function in society and make a difference. So, and it's not easy.
Coach, I enjoyed your inspirational talk. My question to you is so much emphasis put on sports, but not enough on studies. You know, in your college you have 30,000 students, but maybe 1,000 play sports. Mm-hmm. But all kids, and especially in the lower
socioeconomic societies, the emphasis on sports is even more greater, and their sense of that's the way to out of poverty. How do you change that?
You must have been in Mr. Foster's office, because we just had that discussion. I'm not a fan of that. When we were growing up, and Lou Groza was the kicker for the Cleveland Browns, it wasn't talked about all day long on TV, things about how much money you can make as a professional athlete, because you really didn't make much money. Mr. Groza had an insurance company. He worked in the off season. Most of the guys, you remember Dr. Frank Ryan, the great mathematics professor, was our quarterback here at the Cleveland Browns, and they all had off-season jobs and so forth. So the next time that someone's up here, like from ESPN or a media outlet who has the desire to reach a lot of people and impact them, because again, let's go back to his thing. What are you most impacted by? Who you hang around and what you read or what you let go into your mind. Those young people you're talking about that see those bright lights, we talked, Mr. Foster talked today about the fact that there's 20 guys last night got drafted in the NBA and made a lot of money. And what was it, 3 million, what was your stat? 3 million what? Drop out of high school a year. So 20 followed the bright lights because it was flashed in front of them all the time. So if you want to start an initiative of how much of the time we are allowed to put in front of our youth, things that they'll want to go towards. And then, now, let's go all the way. We talked about local history is most important, okay? Local history in its purest form is the family. That's as local as you can get. And so families making good decisions, making sure that we had a lot of student athletes who were great students. You know, I've got guys that are out there and doctors and lawyers and entrepreneurs, but in large part, while they were allowed to dream about what they watched 18 hours a day on TV and sports, the local history of their household, it was important to grow academically. So I don't like the fact that there are so many people think that that's the way they're out. In fact, the biggest hardship as a coach is this: the kid that comes into your office and tells you, you know what, other than football, I don't really have any worth. I mean, it breaks your heart. If I don't make it in the NFL, if I don't make it in the league, I don't have any worth. I mean, you're almost like starting over. And so I'm with you. I'll get behind your initiative. I'll send you my email. I'll march with you. I'll do whatever. But if we can help people understand we need to read the right things, listen to the right things, and hang around the right people who spend more time studying than they do other things, we'll have a lot better chance. But it's a tough battle, because what's in front of them more than anything is that lark, you know, of being that top entertainer or being that top athlete, and that's 100,000 people show up for our games at Ohio State. If we have a lecture on something and we open it to the campus, there's 12 people come. You know, how are we going to get people thinking that way? It's up to us locally in our own households. That's where I'd start.
Hi, Coach Tressel. I'm a Youngstown native and an Ohio State Buckeye. I'm kind of starstruck right now. I grew up in a football family and actually chose my college based on football, so I'm really sorry.
We're here to talk about education.
There are some questions about balance between a more liberal arts education, perhaps, versus a more practical or employable approach, balance between sports and academics. My question for you is, how does the university seek balance between, striving to be a top institution of higher learning, and also, we were talking at the table how universities and larger institutions, healthcare institutions, are taking on a role as, community development or attracting people to the region. How do you, at the University of Akron, achieve a balance between being a top-rated university and being an advocate for the community and providing, support, and what partners have you sought out to do both things?
I would say this to you: in your lifetime, your greatest challenge is going to be balance. It has been in my lifetime. I'm sure some folks that are even more experienced than I, it's been their biggest challenge, because all of those things are good. And in our initiative that we were talking about to create that holistic curriculum for all of our students, regardless of what major they were in, there is a community service component. There is that personal wellness component. There is that relationship wellness. There are all those different things. That's the hardest thing that you have, because I've seen my players sometimes, if it wasn't going so good in football, but they were getting great feedback when they were going out in community service, they liked going on community service things more than they did going to the weight room. Or maybe they weren't doing so well in class. Football's going fine. In class I'm struggling, but boy, I'm going out in community service and I feel good. I mean, I see those kids in the cancer hospital, I see those kids at the children's hospital. Gosh, that makes me feel good. And so you start maybe doing too big a dose of that when you need to be making sure you take care of each phase. So we as an institutional leadership group have to decide what are the right doses, but we want to make sure our young people get some doses of each, and then naturally people have more interest in one thing over the other, and hopefully we'll have a diverse enough, broad enough thinking student population and faculty population that will be able to provide for the community, provide for the academy, provide for the region, all that it could possibly need from our institution. But if you get, he's got the one thing I need an answer for. If you could get the answer for balance, call me too, because I'm not good. I'm bad.
Coach, you mentioned that you want to grow the University of Akron to 40,000 people, students rather. And how does college athletics contribute to growing the University of Akron brand and maintain academic integrity at the same time?
One thing we've always believed in intercollegiate athletics, that it's right or wrong, it's probably one of the first windows to an institution. Some people call it the front porch to your institution. I think what's most critical is that we've got to make sure that we do it right. We've got to make sure that the values of our athletic teams reflect the values of our institution, which reflect the values of our community, which reflect the values of our state. So it can be a wonderful thing if done well. I remember the first time we won a national championship at Youngstown State. I'll never forget, we got back from Statesboro, Georgia, and we landed at the Youngstown Warren Airport, and there were like 10,000, 15,000 people there. They were for miles down the street, and you could just feel the electricity and the excitement, and I mean, you could just see the spirit that gave our community. Our community had been through some tough times. We lost the steel mills. Our unemployment was tough. We had some tough times, but all of a sudden, this little something of winning a national championship just buoyed the spirit of our community. And I remember fighting through the crowd, getting through, finally took us a couple hours to get through the crowd. We finally got into the bus to go back to the campus, and this little old fella, he was probably in his mid-80s, came up to me, and he was just crying, just bawling his eyes out. And he said, Coach, wait before you go. I got to shake your hand. And I shook his hand, and he said to me, this is the greatest day in my life since VE Day. I'm thinking, VE Day? Now, wait a minute. I mean, this was good, but man. But I think that's what athletics can do, and I think we've got to make sure we do it right. Go back to the question of the colleague at your table, though. when things are blown out of proportion and things aren't in the proper perspective and the proper order that they should be, it can not help you. And like everything else we're finding in life, we're finding at academic institutions, is things cost a lot of money. You know, people are in arms wars for building dormitories and rec centers and student unions and libraries. Well, they're doing the same thing in athletics, building stadiums and weight rooms and indoor practice fields and so forth and so on. And that's a challenge for us, because it's a challenge on the institutional side to try to keep up with the Joneses for everything we need from an academic standpoint. It's also a challenge from an athletic standpoint. So I do think this: you're a young man, in your lifetime, there's going to be a lot of changes in intercollegiate athletics. It's not going to stay the same in the future, because it's just tough. It is difficult to, for people to try to keep up with it. So we've got to make sure whatever it is it becomes, whatever role it is we play in intercollegiate athletics, it reflects what we want to be as an institution. And the good thing is if you look at the improvement in academics amongst student athletes over the course of time, in part because they get so much attention. We've invested to give student athletes attention. It's extraordinary. Our numbers are out of this world in intercollegiate athletics from an academic standpoint, because we made it a priority. And so the thing I said to the folks at our place, wouldn't it be neat if we could give it that type of attention to every one of our students? In fact, I asked these three gentlemen down here, I need about 40 more academic advisors, see if they could work it out. And I didn't get an answer, but it can be a great thing.
Coach, your 3 C's, communicate, collaborate, and common cause, and the common cause of education. One of the most discouraging things for students and for parents is to find their kids in remedial English and math classes right out the door. From your vantage point as VP of Strategic Engagement, can you tell us anything that's being done generally and at Akron in particular to coordinate the efforts of the State Department of Education, the universities, and the schools in this state, high schools particularly, so that the kids are aware of what is required of them in order to start doing college work and not have to waste half of their first year in college?
Well, there's no question that that's a problem. In fact, Governor Kasich, I think, used the figure $41 million. I might be wrong, but I thought that was the figure he used that was spent by the state universities in Ohio for remedial classes. So what is it that we can do about it? What is it that we are doing about it? I think our interaction with the school systems is critical, because they're in that remedial need when they arrive at our place. And we certainly want a pathway for every young person in the state of Ohio. It was 150 years ago, in the middle of the Civil War, that Abraham Lincoln said, we need land in every state for an orphanage, and we need land in every state for higher education, because everyone deserves it. And at that time, there were private schools and so forth, but every kid deserves it. So however they come to us, we're going to serve them. Now, how can we serve so that they're better when they get to us? It starts with local history, which is the family. And we've got to do a good job of doing anything we can. And I can tell you Cleveland State, I can tell you Youngstown State, University of Akron, Baldwin-Wallace, Case. We all go out and do all we can possibly do to help the secondary schools and the middle schools. We send our students out, and we have programs and so forth to try to raise their level. And that's what we have to do, is we have to help in any way we can. I had a chance to visit 14 high schools the last 2 weeks of the school year, and to simply ask the guidance counselors in those schools, how can we better serve you? That's what we're here at the University of Akron to do, is to serve you. How can we do it better? And they all will take any help we can give them to come and talk to their teacher-parent groups and talk to them about the standards that need to be made. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have a tremendous responsibility to let people know what it takes to reach their goals. You know, it's one thing to have goals, and who knows if a third grader has goals. Somehow we have to get to that person and help them understand we've got to learn the fundamentals of reading and thinking and all the rest. And so anything we can do as institutions of higher learning, I promise you we're out there doing it in balance. You know, we can't be out in the community all the time. We've got to be here and there. But it is a problem to have that much money spent on remediation. And then, of course, the 6-year graduation rates don't look so good because you might have been spending a half a year taking courses that didn't even count toward your degree, and got to spend more time, and it's a vicious circle. But I think the whole key is the collaboration C, because if we can get collaboration from mom and dad, aunt and uncle, grandma, grandpa, all the teachers, all the higher learning institutions, the media. If the media spent as much time talking about the importance of reading as they did about football, you know, I'm just saying, now I liked it in football because, you know, I used to be in football, now I'm into reading. So I want a little bit more hype in the reading area.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been listening to Jim Tressel, Vice President for Strategic Engagement at the University of Akron. Thank you, Mr. Tressel. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
PNC is proud to support the presentation of this City Club of Cleveland Friday Forum on WVIZ PBS.
Additional support comes from Cleveland State University. Support for closed caption transcripts of City Club forums is provided by the Nordson Corporation Foundation.